There is a paradox in human relationships that many people only come to understand after experiencing deep suffering. The more we give, the more others take, and strangely, the more they begin to devalue us. We believe that kindness will be met with gratitude, that selflessness will bring closeness, and that sacrifice will be remembered with loyalty. But reality often unfolds in the opposite direction. In Buddhist wisdom, there is a saying, if a man carries a heavy load for another, the other will demand that he carry more. If he refuses, he will be called selfish. If he accepts, he will be called a fool. This is the nature of attachment and expectation. When people become accustomed to receiving, they no longer appreciate the giver. Instead, they see generosity as obligation, kindness as naivety, and patience as weakness. But why does this happen? What is the deeper truth behind it? Today, we will explore the 4 things that, when given excessively, do not make you stronger in the eyes of others, but instead make you appear weak. If you understand this truth, you will navigate the world wisely, protect your energy, and be seen with respect rather than as someone who can be used and discarded. Let me tell you a story. The monk in the 4 doors. High in the misty mountains, far from the distractions of the world, lived a revered monk. He had spent years mastering his mind, detaching from illusions, and finding true balance. His temple became a sanctuary, a beacon of wisdom for travelers seeking enlightenment. They came from all walks of life, merchants, warriors, scholars, and peasants, all searching for answers to their struggles. At first, the monk was eager to help, believing that wisdom should be shared freely. He listened patiently, offered guidance, and even took on the burdens of others, hoping they would learn to walk their own path. But over time, he noticed something strange. Rather than gratitude, he received expectation. Rather than respect, he faced demands. The more he gave, the more people seemed to take him for granted. They did not seek wisdom, they sought convenience. They wanted solutions, not understanding. And worst of all, when he could not give them what they wanted, they turned on him as if he had failed them. Troubled by this realization, the monk retreated into deep meditation. He sought to understand why those who give too much often lose the very respect they hope to earn. As he delved into the depths of his mind, a vision appeared before him. 4 great doors, each revealing a fundamental truth about human nature and why kindness, when given without wisdom, can lead to disrespect. First door, unquestioning forgiveness. A young man approached the monk, his heart heavy with sorrow. He had been betrayed by his closest friend. I forgave him, the young man said, but he betrayed me again. I forgave him a second time, and still he lied to me. If forgiveness is a virtue, why does he treat me worse each time? The monk looked at him with deep compassion and said, Come, let me show you something. He led the young man to the first door. When it opened, they found themselves in an endless desert. In the center stood a well, deep and full of water. Many travelers came, eagerly drinking from it, but each time they did, they carelessly kicked sand into the well. Over time, the well became clogged, its water turned to mud, and eventually it dried up. The travelers, indifferent to what they had done, simply moved on to seek another source of water. The young man watched in silence. The monk turned to him and asked, Do you understand? The young man hesitated before shaking his head. A well that allows itself to be dirtied will not be respected, the monk explained. Unquestioning forgiveness is like this well. When you forgive without consequence, you teach others that they can harm you without cost. Instead of valuing your kindness, they come to expect it, and worse, they begin to see it as weakness. The young man furrowed his brow. But isn't forgiveness a noble act? Shouldn't we be compassionate toward those who wrong us? The monk nodded. Compassion is not the same as naivety. True forgiveness does not mean allowing harm to continue unchecked. It means letting go of resentment, but also ensuring that lessons are learned. A wise person forgives, but also holds others accountable. A foolish person forgives without limits and invites further pain. If a man continues to harm you after being forgiven, then he has not changed. And if you continue to allow it, then you have not learned. The young man bowed his head, understanding at last. So forgiveness must come with wisdom. The monk smiled. Exactly. Forgive, but do not allow yourself to be used. Love, but do not lose yourself. Protect your heart so that you can continue to give it to those who truly value it. He had been betrayed by his closest friend. I forgave him, the young man said, but he betrayed me again. I forgave him a second time, and still he lied to me. If forgiveness is a virtue, why does he treat me worse each time? The monk led him to the first door. Beyond it, the young man saw a vast desert. In the middle stood a well, deep and full of water. Many travelers came to drink, but each time they did, they carelessly kicked sand into the well. Over time, the well became clogged and dried up. The travelers, now indifferent to the well's existence, simply moved on to seek another. Do you understand? The monk asked. The young man shook his head. A well that allows itself to be dirtied will not be respected, the monk explained. Unquestioning forgiveness is like this well. When you forgive without consequences, you teach others that they can harm you without cost. They will not value your kindness, they will abuse it. Forgiveness is noble, but it must be given wisely. Without accountability, it only invites further disrespect. Second door. Overgiving without boundaries. A woman came to the monk, her face etched with exhaustion and sorrow. I give and give, she said. I help everyone, yet instead of gratitude, I am met with growing demands. If I do not give, they call me selfish. Why do they not appreciate my efforts? The monk listened intently before guiding her to the second door. When it opened, she found herself in a grand banquet hall, dazzling with golden chandeliers and endless rows of people feasting at long tables. At the center stood a single cook, tirelessly preparing food. His hands were blistered, his face streaked with sweat, yet he never stopped. The guests devoured each dish without a second thought, their plates never empty, their appetite never satisfied. Each time a plate was cleared, another demand followed, louder than before. No one looked at the cook, no one thanked him. They only saw their own hunger. You are like this cook, the monk said. Tears welled in the woman's eyes. Then should I stop giving? The monk smiled gently. No, my child, giving is a beautiful act, but a wise giver does not pour endlessly into others without replenishing herself. If you give without limits, people will not see your kindness. They will only see what they believe they are owed. They will not think of your exhaustion, only their unending hunger. He gestured toward the cook, who, in his weakened state, finally collapsed. The guests did not rush to his aid. Instead, they looked around, searching for someone else to continue feeding them. Do you see? The monk asked. Giving is virtuous, but when done without wisdom, it invites exploitation. You must give with awareness. A wise person gives but also knows when to say, enough. Giving should come from love, not obligation. Only when you value yourself will others learn to value you. The woman bowed her head, realizing that true generosity is not measured by how much we give, but by how wisely we give. I give and give, she said. I help everyone, but now they demand more. If I do not give, they call me selfish. Why do they not appreciate my efforts? The monk guided her to the second door. Inside, she found herself in a grand banquet hall, filled with people feasting. At the center stood a single cook, tirelessly preparing food. Each time a guest finished a plate, they demanded more. The cook grew weaker, yet the guests did not care. They only saw their own hunger. You are like this cook, the monk said. Tears welled in the woman's eyes. Then should I stop giving? No, the monk replied, but a wise giver gives with boundaries. If you give endlessly, people will not see your kindness. They will only see what they are owed. They will not think of your needs, only their hunger. Giving is virtuous, but when done without wisdom, it invites exploitation. A wise person gives, but also knows when to say, enough. Third door, seeking approval from others. A scholar approached the monk, his shoulders heavy with doubt. I strive to be good, he said. I work diligently. I help others and seek their approval, yet no matter how much I do, they still find fault with me. If I succeed, they envy me. If I fail, they mock me. Why does their respect seem so impossible to earn? The monk listened and led the scholar to the third door. Inside, the scholar found himself in a vast hall lined with 1,000 mirrors. Each mirror reflected a different version of himself, some tall, some short, some strong, some weak. As he adjusted his posture, the reflections shifted, distorting endlessly. He kept trying to find the perfect image, but it was impossible. The reflections changed depending on where he stood, how he moved, and even how the light hit them. "You are like this man," the monk said. "If you seek approval from others, you will never find peace. Each person sees you through the lens of their own experiences, biases, and expectations. Their opinions shift like the wind. If you live for their approval, you will always be lost, adapting to their ever-changing reflections rather than standing firm in who you truly are." The scholar frowned. "But shouldn't we care about what others think? Isn't reputation important?" The monk nodded. "Reputation matters, but not at the cost of losing yourself. The moment you begin shaping your life around the opinions of others, you become a prisoner of their expectations. If a man spends his life chasing the approval of many, he will always be running, never arriving anywhere." The scholar looked back at the shifting mirrors, understanding the lesson. So respect is not something to chase, it is something that is naturally given to those who remain true to themselves. The monk smiled. "Exactly. True respect is earned not by bending to please everyone, but by standing firm in your truth, regardless of who approves. If you remain authentic, the right people will see your worth, and those who don't, they were never meant to walk your path to begin with." "I try to be good," he said. "I work hard. I help others and seek their approval. But no matter what I do, they criticize me. If I succeed, they envy me. If I fail, they mock me. I do not understand. Why can I not win their respect?" The monk led him to the third door. Inside, the scholar saw a man standing before 1,000 mirrors. Each mirror reflected a different version of himself, some tall, some short, some strong, some weak. No matter how he adjusted his posture, the reflections changed. He could never find the perfect image. "You are like this man," the monk said. "If you seek approval from others, you will never find peace. Each person sees you differently, their opinions shifting like the wind. If you live for their approval, you will always be lost. Respect is not earned by seeking validation. It is earned by standing firm in your truth, regardless of who approves." Fourth door, tolerating disrespect. An elder approached the monk, his heart burdened with sorrow. "I have been patient all my life," he said. "I avoid conflict. I endure insults. I let others speak over me. But instead of respecting my peace, they treat me as if I am invisible. Why?" The monk listened carefully before leading the elder to the fourth door. When it opened, the elder saw a great lion, majestic and powerful. Its golden mane shimmered under the sunlight, and its eyes held the wisdom of the ages. Yet as the elder observed, he noticed something strange. Each time a smaller creature, hyenas, wild dogs, and scavengers, nipped at its tail, the lion did nothing. Over time, the creatures grew bolder, biting harder, circling closer, and laughing mockingly. Eventually, they no longer saw a lion at all. To them, it had become weak, something they could toy with rather than fear. The monk turned to the elder and said, "If you allow disrespect, people will forget your strength. They will mistake your patience for weakness. They will not honor your silence. They will abuse it." The elder furrowed his brows. "But isn't patience a virtue? Shouldn't we strive for peace?" The monk nodded. "Patience is indeed a virtue, but there is a difference between patience and submission. A river that carves through stone is patient, but it does not surrender its course. A warrior who holds his sword does not strike in anger, but he also does not allow himself to be struck without reason." He gestured back to the lion. This great beast was once feared and respected, but by tolerating small acts of disrespect, he taught the scavengers that he was no longer a threat. He was no longer their superior, but their plaything. This is what happens when you endure too much mistreatment without standing firm. People will begin to believe that they have the right to walk over you. The elder sighed deeply, realization dawning upon him. "So you mean to say that boundaries are not about aggression, but about self-respect?" The monk smiled. Exactly. A strong person sets boundaries, not out of anger, but out of self-respect. True wisdom is knowing when to be silent and when to speak, when to endure and when to stand tall. You do not have to roar to be respected, but you must never let others believe that you are powerless. The elder bowed in gratitude, understanding at last that patience without strength invites disrespect. He left the temple that day not as a man defeated by the world, but as one who had rediscovered his own worth. "I have been patient all my life," he said. "I avoid conflict. I endure insults. I let others speak over me. But instead of respecting my peace, they treat me as if I am nothing." Why? The monk led him to the fourth door. Inside, the elder saw a great lion, majestic and powerful. Yet each time a smaller creature nipped at its tail, it did nothing. Over time, the creatures grew bolder, biting harder, laughing, growing fearless. Eventually, they no longer saw a lion at all. "If you allow disrespect," the monk said, "people will forget your strength. They will mistake your patience for weakness. They will not honor your silence. They will abuse it. Patience is a virtue, but allowing oneself to be treated without respect is not wisdom. It is surrender. A strong person sets boundaries not out of anger, but out of self-respect." The monk was not someone who refused to help, nor was he selfish. He understood that kindness, forgiveness, generosity, and patience are noble virtues, but they must be accompanied by wisdom. Forgiveness does not mean allowing others to take advantage of you. Giving does not mean depleting yourself. Seeking approval does not mean losing your true self. And patience does not mean tolerating disrespect. The four doors are not just lessons for those who sought the monk's wisdom. They are lessons for all of us. If you have ever felt unappreciated, taken advantage of, or disrespected despite giving your best, perhaps it is time to set boundaries, recognize your own worth, and ensure that your kindness is not mistaken for weakness. Remember, those who truly deserve your kindness will never demand it as an entitlement. Those who are worthy of your forgiveness will not continue to hurt you. Those who respect your patience will not exploit it for their gain. And above all, the most important person to value in this life is yourself. Be kind, but be wise.